Hi, this is Clayton with iCEV, and welcome to our session on how to use iCEV to train your judging teams. We have four individuals from across the United States that are going to share their implementation strategies and some success stories and how they use iCEV with their judging teams. So I'm just going to start out and ask each of them to introduce themselves, where they're from, and tell us just a little bit about their background. So Mr. Baird, why don't you start for us?
My name is Bland Baird. I've taught agriculture and agri-science at Spencer County High School in Kentucky for the past 42 years. So I started really young. But anyway, I retired 5 years ago, and then I'm teaching a couple classes a day through Murray State for the last 4 years. Animal science and veterinary science. And never had to work a day in my life. Greatest job in the world. So that's pretty good.
Somebody referred to you, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but as the Adolph Rupp, and in Kentucky, that's a big deal, right? The Adolph Rupp of dairy cattle judging. So I don't know that there would be a higher compliment than that. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit about your successes there in just a moment. Mr. Allen, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Joe Allen. I teach in Cheyenne, Wyoming at East High School. I've been the ag teacher there for 10 years now. Prior to that, I actually I taught welding and kind of did more of the tech ed side. But for the last 10 years, I've been an agriculture teacher here in Cheyenne. We have several programs in our district, but all of our programs are only one-man programs. So I've really started using iCEV over the last probably 5 or 6 years as a big part of helping me manage a fairly large chapter with just myself as the advisor.
And is it Washer? Is that how you say your last name, Corinne? Okay, perfect. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Corinne Washer. I teach in Galesburg, Illinois. I've been there 14 years. I actually taught 1 year in Western Kentucky as well, but I've been in Galesburg ever since, a little bit closer to home for me. I'm kind of a non-traditional ag teacher. I didn't grow up with any ag background. And actually, we didn't have FFA at my high school. We didn't have an ag program or FFA. So I came up through 4-H, and I was always jealous of my 4-H friends that they got an ag program at that school. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an ag ed major. And I was at Murray State, which was already mentioned. And so, so now I'm at home. We have just a little hobby farm with some dairy goats, and since got out of horses, but hopefully when my son's a little bit older, we can get back into that as well.
Burns, how about you?
My name's Ryan Burns. I'm about to begin my first year at the new school, Dover, which is about 9 miles north of Kingfisher. That's where I've taught at previously for 20 years. We had a very large program there of about 120 students. I guess large for Oklahoma, probably not large in some places, but that Dover will have 40 students. My family shows livestock, mainly sheep, some swine. Grew up the son of an ag teacher, FFA teacher. So that's about it.
All right. Well, let's dive into, I guess, the questions that are that we had outlined for this session as for your panel group, and we'll start with you, Mr. Allen. And you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but maybe expound on it. What is your background using iCEV? How long are you a new user? And then what teams do you primarily train? And you may train all different teams, or you may just use it for specific teams. So if you can kind of give us a little information about that.
Yeah, sure. So I've been using iCEV as I kind of dabbled with it for probably 5 or 6 years. The last 3 for sure, we've really gotten into it. The few of us in Wyoming have really tried to kind of lead the charge as far as shifting over to where iCEV is kind of a curriculum that most teachers in our state use now. Matter of fact, our state department has really worked with us to help in making sure all programs have access to iCEV. And so that's been a huge help. But in that process, not only have we been using it in the classroom, but I really found it very useful to start working with teams. I started noticing that if we were doing judging teams, there was a lot of just practice classes that they could look at. Because of the fact that I'm typically training 7th through 12th graders, I'm always dealing with everything from beginners to some advanced kids. And so I really started recognizing that there was a lot of tools to teach younger kids, and they could be working on that while I was working more specifically with the older kids. So I've been really enjoying that. The teams that I've used it for, I actually use it for a lot of teams. If you were to go into my dashboard for iCEV, I've got, I guess they look like classes, but I've got like a horse evaluation and a livestock evaluation in poultry. I've got a ENR team. I've got sales stuff. And so I've just got those set up, and I've gone through and just customized those to hold the modules that I want the students to use. I can turn on and off the modules, and kind of sometimes I turn them all on so that students can see them all. And sometimes, depending on where we're at, I might just kind of turn on and off things that I'd like them to see. But we've had quite a bit of success. I had in 2016, we had the national champion horse judging team, and we, I think our primary training tool was iCEV. I've used it for, in 2018, I had the national champion creed speaker, and he went through and used a lot of career interviews from different modules, just to learn about different parts of ag that maybe aren't applicable in our area of the country, but he wanted to be able to have that information and know a little bit more and have understanding.
I love to hear the versatility. I've never heard about the career interview application before, so that's really cool and exciting. And congratulations on all those
Thank
wins. That's awesome. Mr. Baird, how about you? Longtime user. What primary teams do you use it for? So tell us a little bit about that, about your use of iCEV specifically.
I've been using the content all the way back from the VHS tapes. Half a century ago, I guess. But today, I originally started using it with meats judging, meats evaluation. But now that I'm teaching the Murray State classes, the Murray State classes are built around iCEV. I mean, the entire curriculum is. And with dairy judging, which is really the only, it and parliamentary procedure are really the only two teams that I work with now. Dairy judging is a lot more than just judging cows. In fact, the majority of the contest nationally is a team event and then a knowledge test. And all the teams that I've had for the last at least 10 years, well, last 8 or 9 to 10 years, have went through the Murray State Animal Science class and Vet Science class, which is open actually all over the country. Anybody can do it. And it's you get 3 hours of college credit, but what it does, it gives them a basic background of like reproduction, nutrition, things that they will have to have, knowledge of for the contest itself. And then also using the judging materials. I'm in an area where, because of different circumstances, there are very few dairy farms. So without the iCEV, we do a lot of traveling also, but it gives them the opportunity to practice, judging cows, which, it's the best thing that we've got.
Ms. Washer, how about you?
I have been using CEV materials kind of the same, not all the way back to VHS, but to the days of the DVDs. And I think one of the things I like best about iCEV is, the DVDs, it took a really long time to, build up for one contest when, you buy this class and buy that class. And I think my favorite thing is just, when you get your subscription, you have access to all of it, all the material. And to me, that's kind of invaluable to be able to, change gears and have all the content available at our fingertips. Primarily, some of my favorite uses of CEV as far as which contests we're training for. Specifically, some of my favorites are horse evaluation. I really love the poultry content.
Mr. Burns, how about you?
I've used it kind of like what some of them have said before there, with the VHS tapes and then the DVDs. I think I purchased all the DVDs, but I really like it now where you have access to all the classes on there. I've used it for classroom, for ag mechanics, different classes like that. And I was going through that today. I really like the tool stuff on there. But we've used it a lot on our training teams, from meats to livestock, some poultry. And I've probably done it. I was trying to count, I guess, probably 15 years probably since I started using it. But I found it very beneficial. I really like it too on the activities, and when you're gone, you can set stuff up for a substitute. Students can kind of work on their own and do the assignments and activities with it.
So the next question we have is, what is one strategy you've used with iCEV that's worked well in the success of judging teams? And Mr. Baird, we'll start with you on that.
I mentioned earlier the National Dairy CPE. Each student's worth 600 points. All four kids or judges count, and then there's a team activity that's another 600 points. So it's a fifth of the contest. And because of the ability for students on their own time to access the iCEV classes on reproduction, anatomy, physiology, plus they've all been through the Murray State Animal Science and Vet Science classes, which have gone a long way to give them the basics. This past year in the team event, 400 of the 600 points is knowledge base, and then you have 100 on presentation and 100 on preparing. And our kids actually received a perfect 400 score, first time they'd ever had one on the knowledge base of it. We've been the high team on the test for probably the last 7 or 8 years. And it's all because of the background that they've gotten from the knowledge base that they've gotten from the iCEV classes. I think a large part of it is.
Same question to you, Ms. Washer. What is one strategy that you'd like to share with us?
The first thing I do is kind of train the teams and what we're looking for first, and then just practice with the videos. Like I said, there's just so many different classes and such a variety that it's been said too, even if they haven't necessarily gotten out and gotten to see, live or firsthand things, for example, cuts of poultry. After we've practiced it so many times on CEV, even though they might not have seen very many, in-person cuts of meat, they know their cuts.
Burns, what about you? What's a strategy that you've used?
One thing I like to do with iCEV is the frame of pictures where they're all four together. It's a really good chance for those students to see things that right there together that they probably would have a hard time ever seeing in real life with each animal side by side. I think it really makes a difference on them making it a little clearer on what we're looking for on sorting animals.
Mr. Allen, what about you?
When I first started, I tried just having kids I would log in and then have them use the tools. However, I figured out that it is well worth it to get the student accounts and have them have their own. Not only does that mean they can access it anytime when they're at home, but also I can kind of keep track of some of the things, and I can actually assign things. For some of the contests, especially livestock and horse and poultry are three that I work with a lot on iCEV, and there is just, I mean, it's almost overwhelming how much is available. And so I think the other strategy that I've been able to incorporate is just really kind of cataloging that for myself and being able to work through and be able to identify which students I need to assign certain things to.
All right, so our next question was, or is, what piece of advice would you offer to someone utilizing iCEV? So it could be somebody that's new, could be somebody that's tenured using it as well. And so Ryan, called you Ryan, Mr. Burns, we'll start with you. What's one piece of advice?
Main piece of advice I would suggest is to utilize the pictures, the views. You get an opportunity there to see all different views of the animals, especially in livestock judging. And I would suggest that to teachers to utilize that, because it's really hard in the real world sometimes to get a good picture of the different angles of the animals. And a lot of times I stop the computer and let them see it. That'd be the main thing.
So teachable moments there with that quad split, right? So you can actually see all the animals and have those comparisons. Mr. Baird, how about you?
One thing, and because of the situation that we're in with possible having non-traditional instruction, in Kentucky, we're not sure they're going to let the kids come to school. And we actually, from March the 16th on last year, students were not allowed in the building. And if it hadn't been for the iCEV, it actually made my job, the students, some of them that didn't have internet access would go to friends, or I actually would personally, get them connected. They were able to do the course through iCEV for the rest of the year and actually didn't really miss anything. We had the two classes of animal science and vet science of iCEV through Murray State. They were able to go ahead and get their 3 hours of college credit. I think out of 30 some kids, I had one kid that didn't get an A in the course, which I was really proud of.
Mr. Allen, how about you?
I would say that taking time to just familiarize yourself with everything that's available in iCEV. I made the mistake early on of just maybe going along with, I think they're called playlists for like livestock evaluation. And that was a great tool to get started. However, as I really started preparing a team for nationals, in horse judging, one thing that we did is we went to some of the vet science curriculum, and we went to just some general horse stuff that wasn't necessarily found in the judging side of things, but it really, like Mr. Baird mentioned, it really increased that knowledge. And the year that we were back there in nationals in horse judging, our team was the high team overall in the team activity.
So we're going to go to our last question here. I would like to hear about maybe some success stories. We've shared a little bit about those success stories throughout here in some of your answers, but talk about some of your success stories that iCEV might help you with from the results standpoint, or maybe it was just a student that learned something that was beneficial to him or her that had nothing to do with judging, right? So Mr. Burns, we'll start with you. What is a success story that you would like to share with us?
I had a young man that was an 8th grader one time that through iCEV only, hadn't hardly seen very many live animals in person. First time they ever judged livestock. 3 months of going through classes. We went to the Tulsa State Fair, which is a really competitive contest in Oklahoma. And the young man was in the junior division, in which is 8th, 9th, and 10th, was high in reasons and was in the top 5. I think he was like second or third overall. So that was one that really stuck to me. That was his first time to ever mark cards. But of course, that was in addition to many teams that I've trained with it that's been successful.
Mr. Allen, how about you?
Beyond just some stuff with teams, this past year I experimented and kind of decided to try out the certification side of things. And I had a girl who really wanted to do the certification in horse evaluation, the one that's available through iCEV. And she got that certification. And when she was applying for some scholarships, she was specifically told on a pretty major scholarship she got here at the local university, at the state university, that having that certification was a huge piece, showing them that she was committed to the equine program that they offer there.
Washer, what about you? Any success story you'd like to share?
I would say it's just really neat to see those kids that haven't necessarily, found a place in other areas of the high school, especially, kids even kind of like myself when I was their age, didn't come from an ag background and see successes, like winning a local contest and doing well and making top 10 at state and just things like that. They didn't have an ag background. They get there, they see these kids that look the part, and kids that they feel, just in their head, oh, they're from a better program or whatever, and then they beat them and they're shocked, and that really kind of lights a fire underneath them. And you hear the saying all the time, success breeds success, and it really does. And it's just neat to see how it builds the confidence in the kids when they get that success.
So we'll end with you, Mr. Baird. Any success stories you'd like to share?
We've been pretty successful over the last few years. We've won the national dairy contest the last 7 years. But probably the most success thing that I have is and iCEV has provided a big part of this, but being on our judging teams has been life-changing for a lot of students. One of my first teams that won back in 2008, I had a young lady on the team that came from a very, her background was really rough. And she had never participated in any activity, and I approached her in class. You could tell she's just a really bright kid, and probably the first time she'd ever been complimented on anything by any teacher. She was kind of an outcast. And I talked her into trying out for the dairy team, and she made the team. She actually wound up being second high individual in the nation, and she was planning on working at the local McDonald's. That was her career goal. And a professor at UK contacted me, had heard about her, and asked her if she'd be interested in going to college. And my mother and I took her up there. She didn't have parents. And we took her up there, and they offered her a full ride. And this was in July, after, most kids are knowing where they're going to college a year before. Well, this was in July. College is starting the next month. They gave her a full ride. She went 4 years. And I'd kind of lost contact with her the last year. I got a call from the vice president of the college, and he said, "You remember the young girl that you brought up here yesterday? She gave the vice student address at graduation. She's now in law school at Columbia."
Well, that ends our session. So if everybody that's watching today will hang tight, we'll participate in our Q&A in just a moment.